This is the VandySports postgame show here on the 440 Sports Network alongside Luke Wyatt. I'm Billy Derrick. Thank you all for joining us again tonight. We'll be joined by Chris Lee and Joey Dwyer as well. And first, let's get to your sponsors. The Wash House, the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, Sutherland and Belk, and the Maynard Nexen Government Contracts Group. Topics on today's show, Luke, recapping another Vanderbilt win. Final score, Vanderbilt 47, Alabama A&M 13. And Luke, initial thoughts here. I know we'll get to some comments and questions throughout the night, and this will be around an hour and a half. I mean, this will be a long post-game show. Hopefully we'll be able to get to some comments and reaction. And like I said, we'll get Joey and Chris in here later. But real quick, Luke, just initial thoughts. I know you got a ton of notes, but initial thoughts after a week where a lot of Vanderbilt fans were kind of left confused last week.
Well, when the game started and they have that drive, it was almost 9 minutes. I felt like we sat and watched what they were doing. We didn't bring any blitzes. We didn't do anything. It was all vanilla defense. And once we figured out what they were doing, it got better from that point forward. Now, we still didn't play great in the first half. Obviously had some poor decision-making. I'm not real happy with our RPOs. At times, I think you have to AJ has to keep it more than he does. He kept it once tonight and made a good run out of it. I know he doesn't want to run the football. I can see that in him. Yeah. But there's times when that's the best option of the RPO, and that's what your job is to do the best thing. Now, he played well except for the one pick in the end zone. Besides that, I felt like he played well. There were a couple times, and we talk about what, just an opinion here on the coaching. I felt like when we got in the 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 9s, everything was deep. Mm-hmm. We got to me, let's run a play that'll get you 9 and 10 yards. A lot of those deep balls it's like a long three-pointer when you can go inside of the post.
Right, yeah.
And I felt like that happened quite a bit. Obviously, second half, we really turned it up. I felt like at halftime, Clark got them to finally understand, look, got to play with a sense of urgency, guys. You can't just roll the ball out here. We're not good enough to do that to any opponent. Mm-hmm. And I watched a lot of football today. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah.
And around this country, you can see it. We talk about our guys getting beat deep, and it happened only once tonight. But everybody gets beat deep.
Yeah.
It's the way football is now. Oregon scored 81 today.
Whew. I mean, there were a couple of 70-point point outputs too.
Oklahoma wins 73-0. So some of these offenses, the rules favor the offense so much now.
Yeah.
And I think what we're trying to do, and it's a smart way for us to play right now where we are in the program rebuild, is to be balanced. And we were really balanced tonight. At one point, I think 8:49 to play, we had exactly 194 rushing and 194 passing.
Wow.
That's a recipe for success for Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I don't care who you play.
There's no doubt. Yeah.
And, if we get 400 yards of offense, we're going to be in most games. There's still a few teams on this schedule that's going to be really tough for us to stay with. But we've got 10 left now. And I'll look at it this way. All we got to do is go 4 and 6.
Yeah.
And you're going to a bowl.
People forget that's 2 wins off the board.
Yeah, it is.
Right? So you got to find a way to get 4 wins to get the bowl eligibility.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it gets simplified now.
It does.
Luke, we're going to run through some of the stats here.
Sure.
Of course, you got a lot of comments and questions. You got a ton of notes written down. Just some of the particulars here. Vanderbilt 461 total yards. Alabama A&M 278. So that's I think what this coaching staff wanted. What a lot of fans wanted to see. 246 through the air for Vandy. They held Alabama A&M to 143 through the air. So obviously improvement after week 0. Rushing 215 on the ground for Vanderbilt. Huge improvement after 40 last weekend. Right. Alabama A&M 135. Penalties were way down. 3 penalties for 20 yards. Yes. And that's something that affected them in that game last weekend. And to shore that up is a good sign heading into Wake Forest.
And, Billy, those were all pre-snap, I think. At least 2 of them were,
yeah.
I know. So that really is encouraging. When it's only, those are really correctable.
9 for 14 on third downs, which is a good sign. Mm-hmm. 0 for 1 on fourth downs. Again, I think they had a few last week that they weren't able to convert. So again, it's probably good. There weren't many fourth down attempts, right? You're able to move the chain. So that's probably a good thing. 65 total plays, 7 yards per play, which of course is a little bit better than last week. 14 per completion. Time of possession, again. This is why time of possession doesn't really matter. Vanderbilt 27, Alabama A&M 32, right? And you've told me that it matters to an extent, but you got to look at the game and say
it's an overrated stat. Because think about this: after their first drive, which took 9 minutes off the clock, and they got a field goal out of it.
Right.
After that, what was time of possession? I always look at stuff like
yeah,
that.
who knows? Probably Alabama A&M had it huge.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those are the team stats there. Comparison, A.J. Swan, 15 of 29, 194, and 2 touchdowns. Had that interception, right? The interception, Vanderbilt was driving, right? Had a great drive. It was stalled out. And Luke, on that interception, and I have this in my notes, it looked like he had Carter, but he tried to fit it into a tight window that maybe wasn't there.
Right.
And I thought if you put a little touch on that, maybe you get it back. Again, I wasn't on the field. I didn't have the best angle,
correct.
but I saw Carter streak in the back of the end zone. And again, he knows he made a mistake and he'll clean it up. But I thought that was something that, it's going to happen, right? It was bound to happen. He's a sophomore, and he obviously learned from it. He came back and led a couple of touchdown drives after that.
Well, you got to learn too there. Take the points, take the 3 points.
Right.
Yeah. I think that at times our aggression tonight was a little, I hate to say that we were too aggressive, but some of our play calling or plays that we ran, I don't know if he checked to something different.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of deep passes when it was kind of a hope and a prayer.
Right.
You're not going to get those every time. You're just not.
No, you're not. And real quick, Chili's, of course, that's where we're at right now. They got margaritas, chicken crispers, including the new Nashville hot chicken burgers, and, of course, famous for fajitas. So come and get it while it's hot. They're still open, of course. And at this point, last week, Luke, what was it, 11:30?
Yeah, we were
midnight?
still in the stadium, I think. Yeah, we were in the
fourth quarter was probably just getting underway. So, again, happy for Brian Gruber and everybody at Chili's to get us out here.
Yes, thank you.
Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. No ice cream in the booth tonight. I think they had some banana pudding, so we weren't able to get the ice cream tonight. But they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs, and much more. For more info, visit their website at mpmci.com. They're sponsoring our topics. Luke, you've got a lot of notes. I've got a lot of notes. Again, Chris Lee and Joey Dwyer will be by to give their thoughts as well. Maybe they'll let you get out of here a little bit earlier. But, again, we got a lot of comments and questions. But your notes, let's hit on some of your big notes tonight, and then we'll get to some comments and questions. And I'm sure a lot of our notes are the same. So,
well, I go back to the start of the football game. Mm-hmm. And, like I said, the long drive. And then we block a punt to go up 5-3. After that, I felt like when we scored our next touchdown, and by the way, Borsilli, that's his first kick, and he made it, so that's a good sign and gave him a little confidence. He hasn't missed an extra point yet. I just felt like after that, I thought we were going to start clicking. I thought we would be at maybe 26 by halftime. But the pick in the end zone, and then we were impatient, I thought, at times. The RPOs were poor. And, again, I'm not picking on Swan, but I don't know. We've got to be better in that situation.
Yep.
We've got to be better in the reads. We have to be. I think A&M was weak on special teams, and we took advantage of that. Most of our returns were very good. And, again, of course, the block punt.
Yep.
I will say this about A&M's corners. Now, I thought they got tired in the second half, but in the first half, they played as good or better than Hawaii's corners. Yeah. The one kid, I don't know the name, it escapes me, their boundary corner, he was all over the place. In fact, he knocked 2 or 3 away from Will on good, fairly well thrown balls. Mm-hmm. I love that. So, and again, I think the first half we were just a little bit too casual. And this is the toughest thing for kids, 18 to 23-year-olds, to understand. They see everything that we see in football, and they think, okay, we're supposed to beat this team by X.
Right.
And it's the hardest thing as a coach, and I know Clark stays up at night thinking, guys, we are not there yet as a program to where we can take anybody lightly. We're not Alabama. We're not Georgia. We can't roll the ball out there and beat people. And it's tough for our kids because they talk to those guys, and they think we can be like that. Yeah. But we're not there yet. So we have to understand that. Second half notes, and we only had the pre-snap penalties like we talked about. Yep. I like that. I like the play calling a lot better in the second half. Swan's decision-making much better. And I mentioned this before too, but everybody gets beat deep. I watched so much football today, and we only got, I think it was Mahoney that got beat deep. Yeah, once, and that was the only time.
BJ Anderson on the edge. I think I don't know if that was BJ. Miscommunication with the they push him off to the safety. Right. Maybe it's probably both guys are at fault, but that was really the only situation where Vanderbilt. You looked at it, you just like, okay, they got beat there.
And I will say this: my favorite play, and I don't know if you noticed this. I only think it happened twice. When AJ goes back and rolls either to the right or the left and then spins, he sees the rush from both sides. Yeah. That's my favorite thing we run. And I think one time he hit a wide open Justin ball for a big game.
Yep.
That needs to be in the offense.
That play was incredible where he spun left.
Yes.
Right. Spun left. But I mean, he could have been sacked twice, a couple times. And that's another Johnny Manziel type play. Feels like we're going to have one of those every week.
Every week.
I mean, from AJ, where, he's able to escape the blitz and find whoever, right? It was Justin Ball this time. So you never know.
Jay Cutler, I'm going to go back to Jay a little bit. That was a little bit of what I used to say out of Jay. Jay always told me when we were just talking shop, he said, Luke, one of the best things you can do for a quarterback is let him see the whole pass rush. In other words, don't let him drop back. Let him spin. Let him look the other way. If you've got time, and we were giving him time tonight for the most part, that's a good way because you see the whole field, man, and it's like seeing a beach ball. You're really comfortable. Just a couple more things, and I'll give it over to you. Alexander's first touchdown, love that. Kid played well. All three backs had their times when they ran the ball well. I felt like we were the balanced attack again. Like I mentioned, we had 194 yards. Both teams with like 8:49 to play. Nice to see Ugachukwu get a sack. Kid had been hurt most of camp.
First appearance, right?
First appearance. He and Salanola and two or three others have been hurt most of camp. It was great to see that. And then Junior Sherrill getting involved, had the long pass play from Seals. And there again, I want to say this, and that'll be my last thing for a minute. I am so happy for Ken Seals. You talk about a kid who's been through it all from the back in the Mason days, and he is stuck through. Listen, Ken Seals could go play for some football teams in this country. And I feel good if Swan needs to take a blow or if he gets dinged or whatever. I feel good about Ken Seals playing. Because he's seen it and done it all now, buddy. He's an old Grizzly veteran, and I was really happy for him to get in there and get a touchdown drive.
No doubt. I mean, he's one of the best. We dealt with him a lot fall camp. When he would come talk to us after practice, he was making jokes about the quarterbacks in the room. I mean, he's the old guy in the room now. Right. I mean, here's Ken Seals highlights from 2020, the COVID year. So Cedric Alexander, you mentioned him, 12 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. Patrick Smith, 10 carries, 50 yards. Gillespie had several carries as well. AJ Swan had a fairly long run, and I told Chris in the booth, shades of Cutler a little bit. He's not as fast as Cutler, not as athletic, maybe not as physical. And you mentioned earlier he doesn't want to run.
Well, I wanted him to go out of bounds.
Exactly. I look over to Chris and I say, they might be checking that on film, saying, "Hey, let's go out of bounds." We're in the SEC here.
He'll hear that in the film room.
But I thought A&M pushed Vandy around early a little bit, right? Now it didn't last long, right? The first possession, it was first drive.
Right.
So, but that was something that didn't last. The defense stood tall in that first drive, though, and they forced Alabama A&M to hit a field goal, 20-yarder. Ricky Wright walked to the locker room, though. That's the big story of this game, I think. Now they won the game, they dominated, but kind of beside the point, he was limping after that first defensive possession. So Clark's talking to the media right now, so I'm sure we'll get somewhat of an answer there. Quincy Skinner didn't play a ton. He wasn't sidelined, but doesn't look like he's still 100%. And he could be. Maybe they're holding him out a little bit longer for next week. Shepard, they held Shepard out a lot of that second half as well.
And should have.
Which we thought, we thought would happen. Mentioned A.J. Swan. Jacob Borchella hit a 23-yarder, so, starting to work in a little bit. Yep. The defense, I thought they were much better on that second possession, right? And really throughout the rest of that game, other than that one deep ball on Mahoney, right? That was early second half?
Yes.
Right.
Well, after I touched,
that was early second half. I thought a guy like a Bradley Mann played well. He got pressure a couple of times in that first half. Brian Longwell, the block punt for a safety. Freshman. Local kid. And I was thinking to myself in the booth, I said, local kids making an impact. That's an early theme this season. London Humphreys last week. You saw Humphreys a little bit again tonight.
Junior
Sherrill as well. So they're making an impact. Vanderbilt safety was the first since 2020. That first game of that COVID year at A&M. So really? I thought that was interesting. Vanderbilt took a weird 5-3 lead there in the first quarter.
Wow.
And then second quarter, offensive line, I thought still struggled to get push. Second half, they started to impose their will on. It looked like a tired A&M defense. Felt like the quarterback-receiver chemistry was a little off in that first half as well. But a lot of this felt like, okay, they can turn it on in the second half, right? This is a team that they know they can handle. Also, beautiful throw from A.J. Swan to London Humphreys, who dusted the Alabama A&M DB, sort of a back shoulder type throw.
Into the secondary. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I think he lined up in the slot, and I don't think it was a slot fade, but he just kind of found a space, and Swan found him. So I thought that was impressive. And then Swan to Shepard, 3-yard touchdown on that little fade route. It's getting too easy. I mean, it's really no matter who they play, I think they'll be able to go to that.
It doesn't matter. If you get single coverage, you better go to it because that's going to be your best option. No matter how many route trees they're running, that's going to be your best options right
Exactly.
there.
We mentioned the Swan interception in the red zone. First half, I didn't think he looked super comfortable, but at least a lot of that first half. Second half, everything changed, right? So I'm saying this in increments, right? First half was totally different than that second half in terms of not necessarily the defense. I thought the defense was fine that first half. Offensively, just felt a little off, at least early.
I agree with that. Now, one quick thing.
Yep.
I talked about this when we were talking about, Wednesday. What their D-line stands up and moves, and sometimes they move the linebackers into there. Once they did it 3 or 4 times in the first half, they realized it wasn't making us jump.
Yeah.
They can that.
Yeah. Credit.
They still moved, but credit Vanderbilt for holding their water and not getting a bunch of penalties, because that can happen. When guys are flashing in front of your eyes and you're right there as intense and ready to snap the football or whatever it may be, that's tough to do, especially because you don't ever see it.
I thought A&M's line, they weren't extremely mobile or agile, but they were big. They had some bodies up front.
Yeah.
And they would shift real quick right before the snap. Now, again, they figured out it wasn't really working, so they stopped it. But, yeah, credit to Vanderbilt's offensive line and being prepared for that. Second half, they came out firing. Luke, 3 touches for McGowan on that first possession, a couple of screen passes. And I put this up on the board. Sometimes it's that easy for this offense. Get it to your dude in space. Beautiful throw from Swan to Shepard on that 17-yard touchdown where, again, they like the guy in the slot. Right? You saw Humphreys in the slot there. Shepard was lined up in the slot there. And it's just the chemistry, right? Swan knows
chemistry. It's the way it's one of his favorite passes, and a lot of times out of that you'll get single coverage. There's not safety help over the top.
And there's not a ton of quarterbacks in the country that can make that throw the way he did right there. The touch pass, where he knows only his guy is going to get it. I thought AJ, like I said, AJ was a little inconsistent to that point, but he was able to build up some chemistry with those guys. The game, it got to a point where it was similar to Hawaii for a while. Just sloppy, kind of dull, kind of boring.
Yeah.
But again, they turned it on. We mentioned the Johnny Manziel type play, and then he had the quarterback sneak there for the touchdown. I thought Grayson Morgan did a good job at right tackle.
He did. He really did.
And, he came in for Uzebu. We'll see about Junior Uzebu, what his status is for next week. Marlon Sewell, I mentioned him early. He played a lot, and he's a guy, I don't know how much we'll see him going forward. But again, if there's an injury, if there's a guy struggling, he's going to be plugged in. He's a veteran, and he knows the system, and he knows what the coaches want out of him. So credit to Sewell. I thought a really nice play fake rollout by Swan and McGowan. I think he mentioned that.
Yeah, when he does that spin, because he can see the rush from everywhere.
Exactly.
He gets a glance at it. He knows there's nothing coming there. So when he turns around and spins, he's very comfortable with that. You could just tell him he loved that. He got in a great rhythm and made a perfect strike to a wide open tight end.
Yep, and I thought, speaking of McGowan, other receivers, Richie Hoskins, he doesn't get the ball a ton through the air. I noticed his blocking on the edge.
He does a great job.
He's a phenomenal blocker on the edge.
Glad you brought that up.
A couple of times he's been, and that's his role, right? And he's in there a good bit. Now we'll see how much he plays against teams like Wake and those SEC teams. But credit to him, Cedric Alexander. I mean, player of the second half at least, right? He came in there and ran hard, and he had that 17-yard touchdown, first career touchdown, strong finish. Yeah. I mean, he's a finisher, and he'll stay on his feet longer than I feel like maybe some of the other backs, at least in that second half. And I know A&M was gassed, they were tired, probably a combination of things. But man, he looked good tonight.
He did, and I think the thing with him, he's been here since last spring, so he's got a little bit of an edge on Newberry and Diego.
Yeah,
I think this, Newberry I know has got more breakaway speed.
Yeah.
But this kid reminds me of a guy that used to be at Vandy. He was an all-SEC guy named Everett Crawford from
I thought you were going to say Jerron Seymour.
Well,
but he's probably a little bit more.
He's a little bigger than Jerron, but yeah, that's a good comp too. But Everett Crawford, who's from Huntsville, so take a look at his film sometime. He's in fact, he's the last player that beat Alabama when we won that Alabama's homecoming.
Some good memories right there. All right, fourth quarter, Alexander show. You mentioned Jeffrey Hugo had the sack on the safety blitz, came firing in there. on that one. The defense was a lot better in the fourth quarter.
Much better.
I mean, it was night and day. Young guys making plays everywhere. Yeah, Junior Sherrill, 35-yard catch. Cameron Johnson got in there for a 17-yard touchdown, showing some speed there on the edge. And again, a lot of this probably A&M's their legs. They losing their legs, but you still got to go out there and make the plays.
Right. And they got 65 guys. We've got 85 or whatever it may be. But, I was so excited. Here's what it is. And look, we got to keep it in perspective. It's Alabama A&M.
Got to keep everything in perspective.
You got to keep it in perspective. But one thing I do know is we're 2-0. There's a lot of teams in the country would love to be 2-0 or 1-0 at this point.
Yeah.
But what we had to do to get prepped for Wake Forest and what they're going to run with their slow mash and all this, and they have a good quarterback. Griffiths is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
This is the type of game. It wasn't the full game, but the second half for sure, and most of the second quarter, we played well enough to where we can play with that team. And to me, don't want to get into next week yet, but I will say it'll be a four-quarter game.
Offensive line coming into tonight, Luke, was a big thing I was watching just to see, okay, do they improve? And all of a sudden you see no Uzebo. So Grayson Morgan plugged in there at right tackle. You also saw a lot of Kevo Wesley. And a little, I mean, there were some young guys in there at times. So we got a comment here and we're going to start getting to some of y'all's comments and questions. Sebastian Bronner, offensive line established itself better tonight, which led to success running the ball. Glad to see a better offensive script in the second half and AJ getting into a consistent rhythm. That offensive line, again, it's Alabama A&M, got to keep it in perspective, but you feel like they got a little bit of confidence heading into a road game against an ACC opponent that is down from last year, but they're still a quality opponent. So for your offensive line to get some confidence, I thought was big.
Sure.
And again, first half wasn't perfect. Second half I thought was a lot better, and they were able to maul their opponent in dominating the trenches. And you said that would happen last week at this point last week.
Yeah, I guess I need to go to Vegas because I'm getting so close on these predictions. I said 47-14. I think it was 47-13. So I don't know what I'm doing sitting here with you.
Well, they got a game in Vegas, Luke. Maybe you could head over there to them. Your dad says, this isn't any of our dads, but he says awful first half, great second half. I mean, I think we can agree on that.
I agree with that.
Brian Johnson, do we think Swan can get it done against SEC competition?
Well, there's still some teams we play that's going to be a problem. I mean, we're going to have to max protect to give him time to get it done. And those games, we're not going to be able to run the football very much. So we're going to have to throw it a bunch. Now, there's 4 or 5 SEC teams he can get it done against. I feel very confident in that. He can't make those type of decisions he made in the first half, though. Let me preface it with that.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, he's got a little Jay Cutler in him. I do see that because, every once in a while Jay thought I can throw it through a brick wall, so I'm going to try. And that take the points and get out of there. That's the way you got to do that.
Sebastian, another comment. Key player takeaways. Cedric Alexander is going to have a solid career at Vandy. I would agree with that. Underrated offensive player, Logan Kyle. Kyle, I didn't mention this in my notes. I should have, but he made a heck of a catch. It wasn't much of a gain. I think it was a first down, but he had to reach all the way behind him. Wasn't the best throw from Swan, but he probably knew, okay, Kyle can catch this if it's anywhere. That's showing some of his receiver hands. There aren't too many tight ends that I think can make that grab.
Billy, I tell you what tonight I'm sitting there and I told my wife, I said, look, we've got playmakers all over the field that we used to not have. Not so much at running back right now. Cedric will be, and the other guys are good rollbacks, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But we have guys that can catch football. Ball don't hit the ground a whole lot. No. If it's thrown well, unless the defense makes a great play, they're catching the football. And a couple of years ago, in 7-on-7, you couldn't make completions. That's how much. And I want all the Vandy fans out there to understand. This is only year 3. When Bobby Johnson was here and Bobby got us to a bowl and incrementally got us better, it took him 4 years. We were 2 wins. Even though we were competitive, we still didn't win any more games. Last year, we got to 5. So this year,
ahead of schedule.
We're ahead of schedule.
Added pressure. Clark talked about that. Yeah. Also on defense, Sebastian says underrated defensive player Bryce Cowan, and he got to play. He got to go out there and get some time. He had 3 tackles. He had 1 solo tackle. He had a tackle for loss as well. There was one play in particular where he put a lick on one of those Alabama A&M running backs, and he's a big kid now. He's 6'4", little Zach Cunningham type, maybe even bigger than Cunningham. And he's young, right? But there's some players that project really well, and he's one of them.
You know, I go back to what the recruiting that Barton Simmons and the staff and Clark have put together. You know, our biggest problem is going to be keeping guys. I'm telling you, because when they start flashing, that's all some coaches need to see. They don't need to see that
this fourth quarter might have done something for some coaches around the country.
But seriously, by the time the season's over with, that's your biggest worry.
Yeah.
Because I think that you're going to see more and more performances like we saw tonight from kids. Not just because I'm happy as I can be that we beat A&M.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you can see the ability is there.
Yeah, it's there. Davis Murray, really excited about Alexander. We've talked about him. Not excited with Swan's decisions, and you've hit on them. In SEC play, those are going to have to be cleaned up. Let's see. Knox too tall, balanced between bad and terrible. It's probably a Tennessee fan in there. Sebastian, again, can we expect to see Sewell, Ugo, and Riley continue to get more playing time?
I think they'll get playing time. I'm not sure more is the thing. I think you're still going to see C.J. Taylor and all those guys out there that, you know, at the end of the game, fourth quarter in a close football game, it's going to be the guys that have had the reps.
And he goes to the D-line here as well. Will the D-line look different with Yalanin inside and the return of Agu, Davis, and Christian James?
Well,
it'll obviously look different, but how do they perform, I guess?
I'm going to tell you a kid that got into the game, and he only was in there for a couple of plays, but made a play. I mean, it's Demarion Tom, the big boy.
I didn't see. I was in the bathroom, but
goodness.
I heard he blew a
guy up, and then never lost any momentum. Blew right through him, made a play. It didn't play a lot. I don't know how many snaps he got. Well, Chris may know that, but boy, the future for that kid is rosy.
Yeah, I was actually coming out of the bathroom. I heard the staff yell. I was right behind the room. Heard a bunch of people yelling. I was like, "Who was that?" I go back. Chris said, "Yeah, Demarion Thomas blew up a play." So good for him. Mark says, good adjustments at half by Clark, but that first half was ugly. We've talked about that. Scott, think we need to play the young talent more. And that's something, of course, we've talked about. Fourth quarter, they were active. Cam Johnson, Cedric Alexander, Bryce Cowan, Langston Patterson. But there's a line, right? Sure. What is that line of playing young talent? But Clark always talks about your best 11, right? And it doesn't matter. That could be a freshman sometimes.
It doesn't, but in a game, unless you're 2-3 scores up, you don't play those young guys.
This is a big tease, right? You look at these young guys, you got to play them more, you know.
It is, and I'll be interested to see the how many guys played. I mentioned earlier in the week, I felt like we were going to play a lot more people tonight, and we did.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that number is, but I was really excited about that. Let me say one thing about A&M. I'm going to tell you who their MVP was. Their punter. He was good.
He was good.
He was very good. He had one that was the callback because of the late that went. I counted it in the air. Assuming we'd have made a fair catch, it would have gone 72 yards.
Wow!
And it was called back because they had motion.
A couple of really good punters you might be seeing in the NFL soon.
No doubt.
Hayball, of course, had I think he had a 52 tonight and
63.
63 as well. But the young talent, right? We talk about that. What did Cedric Alexander's performance do tonight? Does that change anything in the running back room with Smith, Gillespie, and Alexander? Like, what impact did that have for Alexander?
You know, it's such a long season. You get 10 more weeks. Two things. Cedric, first of all, it helps him, his confidence, incredibly. You know, we saw that highlight on the way over here after we left the game with a couple minutes left when he jumped over a defender. That's all. When you start doing stuff like that as a freshman and you're just getting your feet wet, that's nothing but exuding confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to help. Now, that room is just going to bring, iron sharpens iron. That's all it's going to be. So Patrick Smith and Gillespie is saying, hey, look, we want to still get our carries. And then you still got Newberry fighting there. And, Diego Benson's in the room as well. So, and unfortunately, throughout the season, you're probably going to get some guys nicked up. Patrick went down early in the game. I don't know if it was a cramp or seemed like a shoulder maybe.
Yeah.
So you're going to have guys miss plays, and everyone's going to get their opportunity to shine.
Yep. Clark called A.J. Swan's performance not consistent enough, and he added that he made some nice throws but also forced some.
Sure.
So Joey Dwyer tweeting that.
Joey.
On Cedric Alexander, we expect him to be a playmaker for us. And obviously we know what he did tonight. Mark, interior offensive line got whipped in the first half. I mentioned that. I don't know about whipped, but I just thought they didn't have that killer instinct, right out of the gate. that kind of developed it throughout the game?
I think it's a mentality. I do. I think it's with kids. I think it's probably all over the country. I watched some games today were similar to ours, like Michigan early on. Didn't play well. I was watching I sat in the bridge, so I went and watched a little bit the Alabama MTSU game. In the first 15, 18 minutes of that game, Alabama was getting whipped up front by MTSU. Yeah. It just happens because kids they see the name on the uniform.
Yeah.
As much as you try to beat that into kids, they're just they're kids.
Yeah. A quick update on DeRicky Wright. Clark said he is okay, and he's expected to come back for the Wake Forest game.
Wonderful.
So he says that the injury is nothing major. He'll be day-to-day, so I'm sure they'll hold him out this week, and he should be back for Wake. So that's a positive update. Julie says, seems we're improving quarter by quarter. That's a good
good analysis.
I think that's a good observation. Maybe take out this first quarter.
That 9-minute drive.
From today. Yeah, I mean – but I think there's some truth to that. Third quarter was better. Fourth quarter was really good. Now, again, it'll be tough to carry over, right? If you can carry that over into the first half of Wake, that's a good sign right there. I mean, if Julie's comment stands tall, Vandy fans will be happy next week.
Well, now that we get into Wake Forest and a team who's, if they were in the SEC, they win games too.
It's go time now.
It's go time. And you're going to have to win games 42-35, 49-42. There's not going to be any 10-3s, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to score with folks. We're going to get beat deep. They're going to get beat deep. They have a receiver named Clark who's incredible. So, again, don't want to get into that too much. But moving forward, we don't have any easy ones, including at UNLV in 2 weeks.
That'll be interesting. That'll be another interesting one. But Wake Forest right now, that's where we turn the attention. Joey also says Clark Lee said Darren Agu was cleared to play tonight, and he was dressed for warmups, came back out onto the field when the team ran out in street clothes, but they wanted him to have a full week of practice before he played. Sounds like he'll be a go against Wake Forest. And with that passing attack, that's a guy they'll need, obviously.
Well, and believe it or not, going through warm-ups can tell you a whole lot. Even though he didn't play, it's almost like getting reps in a game because you're going not 100% in the warm-ups, but it does let him know, okay, I feel pretty good here. I feel free, and it's good to get him stretched out. I like that.
Yeah, Vandy's warm-ups may be a little bit more strenuous than some other teams too, so that's a good warm-up to get in. A couple more comments here to get into. Again, Chris and Joey will be checking in. We'll get their comments. Davis says special teams have really impressed from block punt to punt returns by multiple guys and kickoff returns. It's a great point, and I didn't mention that in my notes, but Coach Lustig had a heck of a night.
He did.
I mean, Longwell had the block punt. Will Shepard had a really good return, couple of really good returns. Jaden McGowan had a really good kickoff return that you thought he might take all the way to the house again. Yeah. So special teams doesn't look like an issue. That's a positive. That can win you some games late.
Absolutely. We got the block punt, and we also tipped another one.
Yes, Langston Patterson. Yep.
There was good pressure all night. Again, A&M was weak in special teams, mainly on their return, punt returns and stuff. We definitely won that battle, hands down.
Matthew says, how much of the first half was playing down to the opponent, and how much of the second half was a worn-out opponent? I'll start with that. I think the first half, you could say they were playing down. I'm not going to say they overrated them or slept on them.
No.
But you talk about the killer instinct. It just didn't feel like they came out with that. And that was disappointing to start the game, right? First couple quarters. Late third quarter particular was better. After A&M cut it to 19-10, you were sitting there saying, what's going on? You just kind of a little confused, but it's almost like they flipped the switch and said, okay, we're turning it on. They scored 2 straight possessions, and they get up, 36-10, and it's over.
Right.
Second half, I think that was a worn-out opponent, but I also think Vanderbilt has to go out and do it, right?
Well, we kept making plays.
And they didn't do that last week, right?
No.
Vanderbilt did not finish last week.
When we got up 21 last week against Hawaii, and I watched Hawaii last night. I hadn't had much sleep.
Yeah.
I watched Hawaii and Stanford last night. Hawaii, they lost the football game. 3 guys were ejected for targeting.
For Hawaii's defense?
Yeah, the starting linebacker, Ufunga, and the number 1, the safety that hit Swan late last week, he got ejected. So they had 3 defensive starters out. That's probably why they lost the game.
That affected the game. It was a two-score game?
I think they won by 18 or 20, something like that. But it was closer than that. I think they held up to 3 field goals and a couple touchdowns. So, look, everyone's got players.
Yeah.
Last night, the Whitlock kid, what's his name? Whitlock, the receiver for Hawaii.
Yeah, they Pofele Ashlock.
Ashlock.
Nick Bride.
Ashlock
too.
He did showed out again last night.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got players. That's what people don't understand. We say, well, and fans are guilty of it too. Everybody is.
Look at Alabama A&M, that quarterback. I mean, that's a big kid, right? And he can run.
They got receivers that can run. They got corners. Like I said, their corners, that one boundary corner was better than anybody Hawaii had at corner. Anybody.
Yeah.
So, and you know, one other thing I want to make a point about when we're talking about taking your opponent lightly. These kids know each other now with social media.
Yeah.
I played against this kid in high school. He's not any good. That's why he's Alabama A&M. Well, they think that.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that kid's getting coached up, and he wants to beat your rear end. So you have to take that into consideration when you play these type of games.
Matthew adds another comment here. Do we think the experimentation on the offensive line will continue? I don't know if I'd call it experimentation. I think it's sort of, Uzibu wasn't available tonight. Who's the next guy up? That was Grayson Morgan. And then I'm forgetting who was out. Charlie Clark.
He played.
Okay, Charlie Clark played, and I need to pull my depth chart up. But
Leighton Nelson?
No, I don't think Leighton Nelson was available.
Yeah, he was out. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but they had to play some young guys.
They had no choice.
Yeah, they had no choice. I don't know that was experimentation. He also says, seems like the original starting offensive lineman hasn't gotten it done, but it's been better when they've tried some different guys. I'm not going to say I agree with that, but I think Grayson Morgan came in and played really well. Now, that doesn't mean he's taken Uzibu's spot, right? I mean, but that means you got guys behind him that can play.
Right.
Now, again, it's Alabama A&M. It's early in the season still, but I thought I was encouraged by Grayson Morgan. So, I don't know if I'd call it experimentation. The offensive line wasn't perfect, as a whole. I thought first half was not great. Second half, I mean, it was a better pocket, right? They ran the ball better, I thought. So, offensive line, you're going to continue to sort of have this as a focus.
Absolutely. Once they've still got 2 or 3 guys injured. Once we get those guys back where we can rotate the 8 or 9 guys, that's incredible.
Yeah.
We go the entire game without one holding penalty. So, if you want to criticize the offensive line, go ahead. But to me, that's just as important as anything, because that means you're not having to extend drives and be behind the chains. And the guys did a great job with that.
All right, Chris Lee. We got some fans. Thanks for coming out, guys.
Connor Owens, and who we got?
There we go. Caleb and Connor.
Thanks for coming out, man.
There we go. Love to see that. So again, Chris is going to stay for the players. Joey Dwyer is going to check in later. So again, we'll get Joey in here. Another comment from Jack Burns on YouTube. Love the speed of the young talent and was happy to see Seals' improvement. You look at the speed improvement across the roster. Clark has talked about that as being something dramatically different from last year. I mean, I think he said he's got 20 guys, running over 20 miles per hour. I mean,
he had one when he got here,
and 5 or 6 over 23, something like clocked, and that's fall camp.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can tell as an entire roster, the speed has improved.
One of our old offensive line coaches used to say, "You give me a house that I can paint. Give me something. Just give me something to work with." Well, now he's got something to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Before he didn't even have a house to paint.
That's a good point. I like that. He mentioned Seals. You talked about Ken coming in, and he did his job, and that's all you need. You don't need him to go out there, and he's not going to go. Of course, when Swan gets hurt, you throw Seals in there, you're confident.
Yes.
Right? It's not this game's in doubt now. No, Seals can go down and lead a drive, and I thought that was impressive.
You watched a lot of practice. Ken Seals is great in practice. That's no surprise to me, whatever Ken does when he does get in the game.
Matthew, Kevo Wesley played a lot and looked good. Again, I didn't have a laser focus on Kevo, but Morgan and Wesley, those are 2 guys that may not start many games this year, but for the offensive line, you have to have guys like that if a guy gets hurt or, an older guy goes down, you throw that guy in there. I mean, you have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did I dream this, or did Kevo go out at one time? Go to the locker room at one time? I thought I saw him walking.
You might be right. I didn't catch it. I did not catch it. It was. I think you might be thinking of 58. I saw 58 come in, but Kevo might have. I didn't catch that. Yeah. So we'll see. Again, thank you guys for all the interaction. We'll probably go when Joey gets in here. We'll get Joey in here. But Luke, defensively, Langston Patterson led the team tonight with 7 tackles. C.J. Taylor did his thing. Of course, he had an interception chance early that he was not happy about. That would have been a pick 6. Kane Patterson. I've heard a lot about the linebacker spot, right? Right now, Ethan Barr and Kane Patterson they got to start tonight, and Ethan's an experienced guy, right? What will it take for Langston to come up and he's played? I'm not gonna say he's split snaps, but he's played a good bit. So what's your read on that linebacker room right now? Just the competition.
Again, they're all going to play. I will tell you this: the key to that, the 9-minute drive to start the game.
Yeah,
it was 3rd down and long. Ethan has a sack and misses it, overruns the guy.
Yeah.
From that point forward, Ethan didn't play as well, and I know that was a compliment. Say he just kept, I think knowing Ethan's personality, he's probably harder on himself than anybody, even Coach Lee is. Yeah. So that probably set the tone for his night, and that can't happen because Ethan's too good of a football player.
Exactly.
He made a mistake, that's fine, but he's going to make a lot of plays for us this year.
Yeah. Secondary, we talked about the one, I don't know if you call it blown coverage, but I think that's what it was with Mahoney and Anderson on that right edge where, great throw. You got to make the throw, but a lot of that was on Vanderbilt just not communicating. But overall, where would you rate the secondary tonight and their improvement after last week?
Again, much improved because now they didn't have the receivers that Hawaii has. They've got a couple of really good plays. I would say last week I gave it a C-. This week I give it a B-.
Yeah.
If you go, that's the way I like to grade it. So
yeah. So secondary a little bit better, as we saw. North Carolina has beaten South Carolina.
What was that final?
31-17.
Okay.
Another update: Vanderbilt defensive lineman Davion Davis was not in uniform tonight, and he was carrying what appeared to be a play sheet. Clark Lee says Davis is out indefinitely, but not medically retiring right now. So Davion, of course, he's put in his time, and he's been through just about everything you can in a Vanderbilt uniform. And you kind of hate it for him.
Yeah.
Again, we don't know if his season is officially over. He's indefinitely out. You don't want to predict anything here, but you kind of hate it for the guy.
Well, you kind of look at him the way you do Ken Seals.
Yeah.
Ken was a starter when Clark got here. Davion was a starter, a captain when he got here. That's tough on a kid.
Yeah.
All the blood, sweat, and tears he's put in, I don't want that to happen to anybody.
No. And again, we'll see. Maybe we're able to see some of Davion this year. Maybe not. But that defensive line I look at as a key next week.
Sure.
Right? Kind of looking ahead to that Wake Forest game. You'll have Darren Agu back. Christian James won't be back yet. But having Agu on the edge and moving Wataha inside, at least we think, and that would probably be the expectation, that gives you sort of we've got our guy in the edge back, and hopefully Capers stays healthy because I think he got banged up tonight, and Miles Capers is another guy to watch, to sort of keep track of. But early look ahead, and we'll keep talking about this game, but early look ahead to Wake, that you're going to need that D line, right? You're going to need Agu, and you're going to need everybody on board.
Everybody you got. I'm more worried. I know we're going to talk about Wake. I can't help but get on that train right now because I'm excited about the chances we have. I think we're going to have a chance in the fourth quarter. Clark knows. He worked with Coach Clausen.
Yeah.
He should, after last year with that sample size, and then coming forward here with a quarterback who's good but not as good as Hartman, and that slow mesh they run, and they call it hang and bang. That's what they do when they go up to the line.
Yeah.
You hold that linebacker a free safety, and then bam, pop it right over the middle.
Yep.
If C.J. Taylor gets a hold of one of those and houses it, we're going to have a lot of fun Saturday. And I know C.J.'s the kind of kid that I guarantee you he's going to get him in that film room and say, "This is all you, buddy. You want to have some fun? Watch this guy and make sure you hold your water and then make the right read, and they can have a big night against that offense because Clark knows it."
Oh, you got to take advantage of your opportunities.
Absolutely.
And again, I know we're not going to preview Wake here, but Mitch Griffiths last week, 329, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and they beat Elon 37-17. That's
pedestrian.
Yeah. That's again, you said it's not do or die. But again, that's going to sort of set the tone for the rest of the way. And Vanderbilt's shown down the stretch of the season they've played better, they performed better. So early look ahead to Wake. Darren Agu being back is huge. Sebastian chimes in and asks, any idea on a return for Prince Colley? Really excited to see him play.
Connor actually texted me this earlier and asked about Prince, and I don't know. It's the reason why I didn't answer you, Connor. I don't know the situation with him. He's adapting from Notre Dame, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't asked Clark. I talk to Clark every week, but I didn't bring it up to him, and it's probably something I won't ask him because I can kind of tell that he doesn't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, I know Prince is going to be here for the long haul, so he may not contribute this year or maybe later in the year, in the last 4 games maybe. But we'll see. And right now we're okay without him.
Yeah. I was just going to say that linebacker room, maybe it's different if you absolutely need a guy like Colley.
Right.
But, you're not starving for another piece of depth. Now, you take it, right? I mean,
sure,
you take what you can get.
Yeah.
But in that room, you're fine with the Pattersons, Barr. I mean, Bryce Cowan stepped in and played well tonight as well. I mean, this is as good of a linebacker room, I think, as Vanderbilt's had in a long time. So you talk about position groups that'll be important next week. That linebacker room, again, is very important. Maybe the most important is the cornerback spot. Thought Tyson played a little bit better tonight.
Did.
He made a really impressive tackle in the open field where he showed his physicality. He's a good – we get blindsided by a lot of the plays from last week, but I thought in the run game today, he made a few tackles where you go – he's got some physicality in him.
He does. That's
right?
why
I think he likes the run game, right? And then B.J. Anderson obviously gave up that long one, but I thought other than that, the secondary and the corners were much improved.
Yeah, I missed when he passed it off. I don't know if he slipped.
Yeah, the camera angle missed it. They didn't cover the whole sideline, but Anderson, you saw the fake from the quarterback it was a great sell, but they just sort of lost him. And I think both of them is just a miscommunication, right? And it was a slow pass off. But again, that's the really only mistake.
That's not
that happened. And we got Joey Dwyer coming in here now. Joey was at the press conference. And Joey, you are live on the air, my friend. Chris Lee is still there. He's going to stick with the players and maybe get something from the players, but
he's eating ice cream.
Yeah, I told Luke there was no ice cream in the booth, so we were not able to snack on that. We had banana pudding though. I think Joey enjoyed that. Wow. Joey, thanks for taking the time, man. I asked Luke initial thoughts, right? We've taken a lot of comments and questions, and a lot of the young guys like Cedric Alexander were definitely something to talk about, but just initial thoughts after a win that I think Vanderbilt fans are more happy with after last week.
Yeah, Clark Lee was a lot happier as well in the press conference. Last week's presser felt like a loss. Today felt like they won by 30. So it was a lot different than it generally has been throughout this year. It feels like a nice step for Vanderbilt, but Clark Lee prefaced the whole press conference, don't overreact to the offensive line play. Don't overreact to the freshmen playing. Don't overreact to the margin of victory. Feels like that was kind of his message tonight was we're happy with the win, but we're not overreacting. They kind of want to see how their guys respond to a win like this rather than what they had last week. So it'll be an interesting week to see for Vanderbilt as they head into Winston-Salem.
And Luke, you talked about overreaction, right? Last week, it's week 0. Hawaii's a brutal team to try to prepare for week 0. Yeah. And now you come in first half, probably there were some Vandy fans overreacting, right? As fans do. But all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, Vanderbilt's up 36-10 and the entire mood has changed. And, but that's college football, right? I mean, it changes like that.
And, Joey, I mentioned this a while ago. After the 9-minute drive that started the game, when we just sat in our 4-3 and basically vanilla defense, after that, I felt like we controlled the football game. Even though we played a little sloppy in that first half the rest of the way and there wasn't a huge sense of urgency, I felt like we were still in control. You never felt – last week you felt like, man, this could get away from us. This week you never really did.
Right. I think the offense was in a little bit of a rut for most of the first half, but defensively it felt like a lot of the miscues from last week were fixed. Maybe not fully. You still had the breakdown in coverage, which Clark Lee said maybe was more on Mahoney than Anderson, but feels like Vanderbilt kind of cleaned it up generally. Again, don't want to overreact because of the opponent, but when Alabama A&M was running it up the middle. The whole first drive, Vanderbilt adjusted on the second drive and kind of slowed that down.
Right.
Felt like tonight was a much better night just in terms of how Vanderbilt controlled the game and how it adjusted to a lot of the tempo and a lot of the weird looks that Alabama A&M gave it.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot, right? And then, you're playing Alabama A&M, an FCS team. There's, you're not loaded with storylines, right? This isn't an SEC opponent. But we talked about the exotic schemes and pressures that they would show. And Luke said it earlier. I thought they handled it well. The offensive line, you really didn't see. You saw maybe one procedural penalty.
I think that's it. We had the other two were had a delay. We only had 3 penalties, I think.
Yeah, three for 20 yards.
I'll take that every ball game.
Which I think they had 9 last week. So, but Joe, we talked about that, and that really didn't affect the game at all. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought that could have been an issue early, and it felt like it was a little sloppy last week, like most of the game was last week. Yeah. But it felt like Vanderbilt's offensive line was a lot better. It got more push in the run game, which was really noticeable throughout the night. Patrick Smith had 50 rushing yards, and obviously Cedric Alexander with 87, and I'm sure you guys have talked ad nauseum about Cedric Alexander, but it was a really good night for that running back room. I don't know if I'm willing to say that they're going to run for 100 yards against Wake Forest or more than that, but it feels like there's more of a chance at that than there was about a week ago, and I think that's certainly something to take. A.J. Swann's decision-making, I think, might be my biggest concern coming out of tonight. But the run game, I think, is maybe a little bit less of a concern than it has been for me in the past. Maybe the secondary slightly less and the pass rush a little less. Darren Agu probably going to play against Wake Forest from the sounds of it. So
that's what it felt like in the presser, that he'll likely be available.
Clark Lee said that Darren Agu was cleared to play today, but they wanted him to have a Tuesday and Wednesday practice before they threw him on the field. Hence him going on the field for warm-ups in full uniform and then coming out in shorts. Nothing really happened there. That was kind of a plan to make him go through the game day routine,
stretch and
kind of get ready for a pregame routine rather than just being thrown out there.
Yeah, and he's got that the brace on the right arm now, I think, which I think makes him look a little bit even bigger, scarier a little bit. So, but Joe, you had a nice feature piece this week on London Humphreys, and if you haven't checked it out, it's a great piece. Got to sit down, talk with him, and he's a very mature kid. He had 1 catch, 23 yards. Another freshman, junior Sherrill, 1 catch, 35 yards. Those guys, and I'm sure you got another feature coming up on another player. Maybe it's Sherrill, maybe it's not. But those 2 receivers, and Luke and I have talked about it a lot, those 2 receivers are going to play a role, not just in the future, but this year.
Yeah, and Humphreys only had that 1 catch, but drew a lot of attention throughout the night. I noticed
had a couple other targets.
He was in one-on-one coverage on the I forget where, but at some point on the field, and he was the only guy on that side, and they hedged a safety over to kind of help on him because they knew he was going to run
on that far left sideline.
Right. Yeah, they knew he was going to run a fly, and they hedged over to kind of take that away. That opens up a lot for Vanderbilt, especially with how it struggled in the running game at times and how it struggled kind of to get its tight ends involved. The tight ends got involved a little bit more tonight too, which I think was a factor. One of them was probably not designed to go to Justin Ball, but went to Justin Ball on the A.J. Swann scramble. But
I think Ball was blocking on that play, and then he just sort of faded out there on the Manziel type play we talked about earlier.
Yeah. I was telling Billy earlier, this Jay Cutler, when I was at Vanderbilt, used to tell me that there's some of their stuff that they used to run is designed to do that. Mm-hmm. You would take that way, you see where the rush is completely. You do a little 360, you got a vision, and Swann looked comfortable with it. It got him in rhythm. He pumped it. I know Ball was wide open, but he really felt comfortable with that. And I think you'll see actually not designed by that, but put you in a situation where that can happen again.
Right. I think Swann looks more comfortable on that play than a lot of the plays throughout the night. So
again, it's because he knew no one's around me. I got all day. Where we got? And he's surveying the field. And I don't know if Ball was second or third in that route tree, but
I thought on that play he was going down. I mean, there were a couple of defenders on him, and AJ feels like he's also the type of guy. When he feels the pressure, he really feels it, but he also doesn't freak out, right? He doesn't panic. He's able to break a tackle because he knows how big he is, right? He can take on a guy, right? Now it might be different against a Georgia or a Tennessee, right?
Sure.
But right now in the season, he knows he can take on some pressure and break a tackle or two, and that's impressive. You know what you can do. Right, know what you're capable of. I think that's what Clark has tried to get at him with. And you mentioned, he's got to get more consistent, right? And I want to ask you about that. What did you notice about, I'm sure he was asked about Swann. How did Clark evaluate his performance tonight?
Yeah, I think consistency was the big message still. I tweeted something about it. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, we know what he's capable of. That's probably not what he's capable of. He made a few nice throws, also made a few bad decisions, which Billy and I were collectively groaning for in the press box. Some of those throws that he got away with in the first half probably should have been interceptions. It probably would have been interceptions had it been in Winston-Salem. Wasn't tonight, and he got away with that, but I think A.J. Swann's decision-making and consistency has to be a lot better, and that's kind of what Clark Lee echoed. Same with Will Shepard, who had that touchdown maybe in his hands, maybe on his fingertips, but couldn't get it. Made a few nice plays, though, on the punt return, and then obviously the 2 touchdowns. So solid night for Vanderbilt. Still room to grow and still food on the plate for that offense, though.
That's a good point. That should have been a touchdown to Shepard there.
Will stopped his feet. If you look at it on the replay, his arms are extended, and instead of running through the ball, he kind of slowed his feet. So therefore, it went off his fingers.
And then you also saw, we talked about the interception from Swann, right? Maybe trying to fit it into a tight window that wasn't there.
Right.
But felt like Carter's back in the end zone. Maybe you float it and give it some more touch, and maybe that's there. So it's those 2 decisions. Well, the Shepard, that was a drop. That wasn't a decision. Mm-hmm. But those 2 plays there, Shepard scores that touchdown. That increases the lead in the first half. And then one of the next couple of drives, they end up throwing that interception, Swann does, intended for Carter. So first half is a lot different if those 2 plays go the other way. So that's another thing, right? The margin for error is still small, even against a team like Alabama A&M. I know they won, 47-13, but the first half margins you saw were pretty small. I mean, and Luke said it earlier, it doesn't matter who they're playing. Yeah. And that's what it feels like with this team. They know what they're capable of.
Yeah, I think on the interception, I described it as A.J. Swann throwing it into a dense area, which I got some flack for on Twitter. That's a journalism term. But I think that was a theme tonight that I didn't love, was just throwing it into spots he didn't have to throw it to. Even the fly or the post to Jaden McGowan, I can't remember which, they got broken up. The running back was open for a first down there. So A.J. Swann probably could have the game slowed down a little bit for him in his head. And I think you'll see that more as the season goes on, but obviously wasn't there completely tonight. But you saw what A.J. Swann can do and how special he can be as well.
Well, kids, and I was talking a little bit about this with Billy. In my 40 years at Vanderbilt, kids always, whether they think, even though they are not Georgia or Alabama, when they play an Alabama A&M, they want to take it in big chunks. They think, okay, it's Alabama. I'm going to go, instead of throwing a 7-yard completion and getting the first down, he tries to get it all. And that's just kids. They do it.
Yeah.
And that's what Clark's trying to beat out of him. Got to stop that. It's okay to kick a field goal.
Right.
Again, Chili's, thank you to Brian Gruber and everybody that made this possible. Couple of sponsor reads here. And again, if you have any more comments, questions, we'll get to them as we start wrapping up a little bit here. The Wash House, our presenting sponsor for basketball season, even though it's not basketball season yet. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Log on to washhouseclean.com to stop in today and get your time back. Let's get to final thoughts here. We've got, comments and questions have rolled in here. Joey, you've been at the press conference. Luke, you were in the stands. We were both in the booth. And again, Chris Lee will, he'll have his full comments. You guys will have stories out tomorrow. But Luke, I'll start with you. Final thoughts from this game and your feeling heading into next week in Winston-Salem.
Well, I felt like tonight we got what we needed to get done. I mentioned the balance. With 8:49 to play, we had a 194 rushing, 194 passing. That's the formula for Vanderbilt to win football games. And next week, it's going to be a fourth quarter game, in my opinion. If we do without turnovers, you can never factor in the turnover stuff. But if we play error clean football without but maybe one turnover, I think the fourth quarter, it's going to come down to A.J. Swann making the right decision. And we're going to have to win games 42-35. There's not going to be any 10-3s. And I think that's what we're looking at next week is a dogfight in Winston-Salem. And I think it's going to be great for our kids because we're sitting on 2-0 no matter how you slice it. And a lot of people would like to be there.
Right. I think tonight you look at a story of 2 halves. And I think coming out of that second half, you feel a lot better. You feel good about how they adjusted to what Alabama A&M threw at them. Scored, I think, 3 of the first 4 drives of the second half. In the first drive, had 4 chunk plays in a row. went and scored a touchdown with Will Shepherd in the end zone. So you feel a lot better seeing that second half and seeing kind of how Vanderbilt adjusted and how Vanderbilt kind of took a step forward there. Do you feel great? Maybe not, but you feel like they can at least give Wake Forest a chance. And it feels like Vanderbilt will probably play up next week as opposed to what it did this week. It'll be a full stadium. It'll be a game that's probably nationally televised. I don't know if you know that, Billy.
I think it's ACC Network, I think. So
10 a.m. Central.
10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. And a little announcement, Joey and I are making the trip.
Look at y'all.
We're making the trip. We're gritting it out. We're leaving Friday. We're making the trip, and we're going to be there. We'll see if any other Vanderbilt media are there, but we'll be there, and I'm excited. Winston-Salem's a beautiful town, and I think Vanderbilt fans that make the trip will enjoy it. It's about a 7-hour drive, and it's a similar atmosphere, I think, to Vanderbilt. Similar stadium look. They're done with everything, right? I think Vanderbilt looks at that stadium and says, "Okay, we'd like to be somewhere like that, a Duke, right. A beautiful facility." So we will be there. For me, guys, you saw what Will Shepherd can do tonight again. And so far in 2 games, 12 catches, 130 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he legitimately is one of the best receivers in the country, right? But you also saw there's still room out there for him to dominate even more. Sure. I mean, he could have had 3 touchdowns tonight. So I think that's something to watch. If Will Shepherd is dialed in and laser focused, I think this Vanderbilt team can beat, I don't want to say anybody because you got, the reigning national champs on the schedule in Tennessee, but
and Ole Miss, put up 70-something.
Yeah, 10 out of the 12 teams, I really do. Ole Miss again. But the Auburns, the Missouri, the Kentucky, if you have a game where Shepherd dominates, I think you're in a great shape because you have to put the defense in a bad situation. Now we got to double them, right? You got Quincy Skinner. You got Humphreys. You got Sherrill. Like you said, they've got options. So Shepherd, it's almost like it's boring because he's made it look so easy. Right. So Shepherd, of course, is one of my takeaways tonight. Defensively, I thought they were better. I mean, in the second half, at least. Take away that first half. Not even first half. It was really the early second half with that mistake, that blown coverage. So overall, I thought they were better defensively. Offensive line, slowly getting there, slowly better, right? Not where you want them probably, but everything's out in front of you still, right? You're 2-0, and you're heading to Winston-Salem with some confidence after this second half. So those are my thoughts and what I've got. And again, if you guys got any last-minute things, it looks like we've got one more from Sebastian. What percentage of the offensive-defensive playbook has been used so far? That's a deep one. And will the coaching staff show a lot more against Wake Forest? We probably can't answer that first one. I don't know if you've been in the film room, Luke. I know you have before, but that stays there.
I'll be talking to Clark in just a little bit.
Will the coaching staff show a lot more against Wake?
Well, however the game's going, it'll dictate that. I think you always have plays in your hip pocket. I think Joey always has things in his hip pocket. And, same thing with Coach Howell. Now, Coach Howell is very familiar with the Wake Forest program as well. He was
a lot of people on the staff are, yeah. And we were talking to –
and I think it's an advantage this year. I don't think it was necessarily last year because we weren't – we got to 5 wins, but at that time we weren't playing well, not yet. And I just feel like this week, I know Clark's thinking, Luke, shut up. But he knows the slow mesh. He knows the slow mesh. He knows the hang and bang. He knows what they're going to do. And if he can get C.J. Taylor and Mahoney and those guys in the right positions to make plays, he's showing them in the film room, this is you. That's what he's doing. He's going to show them. See that? C.J., that's going to be you Saturday. So all you got to do is make the right read. Boom, you're going in the end zone and celebrate. So it's just going to be a great football game, I think.
Big week. Big week for the team. Big week for the fans. Joey, thanks for checking in, my man.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to next weekend. Big
yes,
week.
Sir. Yes, sir. We will be there. Joey, appreciate it. Luke, thanks for hanging out.
You bet.
For Joey, for Luke, and for the 2 fans that showed up here, thanks, guys, for checking in. I'm sure we'll have a few more after some of these SEC games. But thank you guys for checking in. And you've been watching another post-game show. We will probably be doing it on the road in Winston-Salem somehow, some way. We'll get a post-game show in, so stay tuned for that. But I appreciate all of you guys checking in, and we'll see you next week.